It's pouring rain. Oh, God. Well, this is going to put a damper on things. So I want to know about your most horrible race experience. A lot of times when I talk about a poor race experience, it's usually something that's self-inflicted. You wore a new pair of running shoes that didn't agree with you on race day. Maybe you ate something that didn't agree with your stomach right before the race. Maybe you forgot to use the bathroom. Maybe you couldn't find a bathroom. However, when I say self-inflicted, these are all things that are within your power, or at least within your control, that have contributed to a poor race experience. I'm talking about the things that are out of your control, things from the actual race itself. I'm curious, without naming names, what events have you been to that have been absolute letdowns? Now, before we dive into the nuts and bolts of this video, you're probably wondering what I'm getting at. And I guess the point that I'm trying to drive home is the value that you pay for your race experiences. At the end of the day, when we invest in a race or in a race series, we're actually paying for an experience. We're looking to have a good time. The shirts, the medals, all this stuff is great to have, but if you have a poor experience, that can sour everything. So when I think of a race, I think of the experience that I'm getting from that race. So here are some thoughts that I have on the Run to Escape Mission Mount Olympus series. The cost of this whole experience is $75, and when I first learned of this, I was kind of having a hard time wrapping my head around being able to really promote a series for this much money when there's no shirts, no medals involved. It's just an experience. And then I had a race experience this weekend that put everything into perspective. My son and I signed up to run a local 5K. It was put on by one of our local running groups, which I'll talk about local running groups at another time. But it was a race local to us. It was $30 a person, and my son and I both entered it in. So after our registration fees and after the processing fee, we ended up paying around $75 to run a 5K. And I'll show you some clips of going to the race. Taco 5K! Tacos! As you can see, we were pretty excited, or at least I was. The weather for the day was kind of rainy and crappy, and it just was kind of setting the mood for what the rest of the day was going to be like. Oh, God. Anyway, we paid money to run a race, and that's what we were going to do. So with all late registrations, there's a possibility that you won't get a race shirt. And this is one of those races where medals aren't typically given out to everybody, just the top 3 finishers. And the top 3 finishers of each age group. Now, my son's lucky enough, being a 12-year-old, sometimes there's not a lot of 12-year-olds that run a race, so typically he'll end up placing in his age group, which is a cool prize for coming and running with Dad. So anyway, to kick things off, the weather wasn't looking good. GPS said that we were going to be there about 15 minutes before the race, so we were pretty excited that we were going to be able to pull this one off. However, the first strike for this whole series was the address provided wasn't the address of where the actual starting was going to take place, but it was more of the maintenance for the park that the race was going to be held in. Again, this is a pretty forgivable error on behalf of the race directors. It happens. It's not the end of the world. So when we got to the maintenance shed for the park, luckily a friend of mine was running the race, and we called him, and with a little bit of direction, we were able to get to the actual starting line. But we were no longer early. We were actually cutting it pretty close. That's something that I really hate doing. The second kind of strike that happened during this live race was the registration process. Actually, everything was just a mess. When we got to the event, I realized that it had been raining, and it looks like the group threw everything underneath of a pavilion. Things weren't really well labeled. And so, again, these are all forgivable things. Had the rest of the experience gone off without a hitch. But it just was utter chaos to begin with. So I'm standing shoulder to shoulder with a bunch of people that I don't really know. And I asked my friend, somewhat audibly, where do we check in at? And he says, oh, that guy over there. And when he said, oh, that guy over there, what he really meant to say was, that guy that you're rubbing shoulders with. That's how close I was to the guy who who was taking care of registrations. And I don't know if he didn't want to be there or if he was just mad that he was handling registrations, but either way, this guy wasn't impressed, and he really didn't give me the warm and fuzzies about running the race. So now we're up to like 3 strikes already for this whole experience. And I figured, well, if the rest of the race goes off okay, I'll let it go. I think you can see where this is going. It didn't get any better. In fact, the whole day was just a fantastic crap show. The race was so poorly organized that it almost seemed like this was the group's first time organizing a race. Now, this is a pretty big group that organizes lots of races, so I know it's not their first race, but it just was so unorganized and so frustrating that I don't think I'll really run a race with this group ever again. That being said, we paid $65 to run in a race that was poorly put together. It was poorly organized. The weather really wasn't in our favor, which is no fault of theirs. But all in all, $65 just for a lot of nothing. Now, I try to put a positive spin on this because my son was with me. I tried to just let him know that nothing was his fault and nothing was our fault, actually. I got to run with my son, so that's kind of the takeaway that I had. But I don't need to pay $65 just to go run with my son. We can do that anytime that we like for free. So when I think to this Run to Escape series and it costing $75, yes, you may not get a t-shirt or a medal, but it is an experience that you can share with others. My experience with the local track club, paying $65 to run in an event that was so poorly executed that I felt horrible. It felt like a giant waste of money. And that was a one-time race or one-day event. With the Run to Escape series, that experience encompasses a number of, if you want to look at it this way, a number of races that you can spread out over a course of time. And it's not a one and done kind of event. I think I kind of laid that out in my previous video, but I thought maybe sharing my little story of our recent race experience would put things into perspective. At least it did for me. So for $75, you get a number of races instead of just one. And these are all do at your own pace. However long it takes you to solve the riddles is entirely up to you. There are helpful hints along the way that can help you solve the riddles. So it really is a choose your own adventure kind of a race, and it's a do at your own pace kind of a feel. And with this discount code, you can save 10%. Point being, the cost of the Run to Escape series gets you a whole lot more than just a single race event. And I can guarantee it's not going to be as horribly disorganized as the event was that I ran in just last week. That's all I got, guys. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you guys on the run. Okay, that's video, because now it's going to flash. Okay, there we go.
So it's doing video now?
It's doing video now.